Hello, white people. The world is running out of sand, and you need to care. You like how that's titled? Sand is the world's second most consumed natural resource, and our rapidly growing cities are draining the supply. This is an article from December 3rd, 2020. You're probably thinking the same thing I was. I first heard of a global sand shortage. I've seen massive deserts. How are we possibly running out of sand? It's not a stretch to say that sand is the foundation of our cities. It's a key ingredient in the concrete we use to construct highways and buildings. We use it to make glass. It's even in the chips that power our phones and computers. We use 50 billion tons of sand every year, and it turns out that not all sand is created equal. There is, of course, a lot of sand in deserts. The problem is it's basically useless to us, said Vince Beiser, authority of The World on a Grain, the story of sand and how it transforms civilization. Useless because desert sand has been eroded by wind over millions of years, making the grains smooth and round. That's not ideal for making concrete and other resources. The sand we want is rougher with corners and angles so the grains can lock together. It's like the difference between trying to build something out of a stack of marbles as opposed to a stack of tiny bricks, Beiser said. The sand comes from places like riverbeds and beaches. As with shortages of other natural resources, the dearth of sand involves a finite supply of the material and a growing number of people fleeing rural areas for cities. What? No, it's going the other way, but anyway. According to Beiser, the world adds the equivalent of 8 New York cities every year. Really? Given that the construction of a single building can require about 3,000 tons of sand, it's not surprising that this resource is slipping away. So now what? Researchers are looking into a variety of replacements for sand as an ingredient in concrete. Shredded plastic, oh boy, shredded rubber, and even hemp are being used on a limited scale. But Beiser says the shortage is a symptom of a bigger problem. We've got to find ways to build our cities that not only use less sand, but they use less of everything across the board. Yeah, you know these jackasses that say we need to use less of everything and everything needs to be sustainable. They have no idea what they're talking about. They're just pulling it out of their ass to act like this utopia exists. Right, so we're going to have buildings that just have pillars and a roof, dirt floors, so that we can be sustainable and use less of everything. I think we'd win if the utopians just stopped breathing and stopped eating so that they could do their part for everything to be sustainable. All right, I have another article for you here. Boom in illegal sand mining threatens vulnerable lakes and rivers. Extraction driven by a surge in infrastructure spending risks causing extreme degradation. Right, so this is India digging sand on Kuka High River in the outskirts of Bhubaneswar, India, last year. And this is an article from April 30, 2021. Illegal sand mining driven by a post-pandemic surge in infrastructure spending risks causing degradation to some of the world's most vulnerable lakes and rivers, environmental researchers have warned. Sand mixed with cement to make concrete is the most consumed material on Earth, apart from water. As the waning threat from the virus in countries such as China sparks renewed construction activity, there are fears that the criminal gangs who play a leading role in the industry will be spurred on to dredge even more sand from delicate ecosystems. Starting from now, we'll see governments injecting a lot of funding into infrastructure to boost the economy, and that will trigger a lot of demand for sand and gravel, said Pascal Paduzzi, head of the UN Environment Program Global Resource Information Database in Geneva. Paduzzi explained that lakes and rivers were damaged by sand mining, which can change the course of waterways, lower lake levels, erode banks, disrupt wildlife. In some places, it's been such a heavy load on these environments, it's led to total ecological disaster, he said. Kiran Pira, author of Sand Stories, Surprising Truths About the Global Sand Crisis, said many large projects had already begun under the cover of the global health crisis. Rona has had the effect of increasing the amount of sand that's being extracted, she said. A lot of governments have used the pandemic as an excuse to push through projects that would not have gone through, like land reclamation. Sand found below lakes and rivers is better for making concrete than sea or desert sand, which is too round or to bind with cement. Although sand appears plentiful, it takes thousands of years to form through erosion. Reserves are being rapidly depleted as sand is mined more quickly than it can be replenished. Because the extraction is poorly regulated around the world and mining is often undertaken informally, the activity is dominated by organized criminal gangs in many areas. A paper pushed in March in the Journal of Extractive Industries and Society highlighted how the sand mining industry was plagued by rampant illegality, a strong black market, and intense violence. There is scant global data on the problem, in part because sand is usually mined locally near where it is used. It's the natural resource that is the most exploited on the planet, and yet we know very little about where it comes from and who uses it, said David Tickner, an advisor at WWF, the conservation group. WWE, probably. It's an amazing low-profile issue considering its importance to our daily lives. Cement production has tripled in the past 2 decades. Cement metric tons, BN, I don't know what BN is a close proxy for sand consumption. All right, so here we go. We're looking at a graph. Blue is the world and reddish pink or whatever color you want to call it, that's China. Well, China's having a decrease in their population, so probably their construction is going to not be as fast as it has been over the last several years. I don't know, I'm just assuming. The problem is most acute in China, the world's biggest sand consumer. Beijing has relied on state-dominated industries and infrastructure spending to spur a post-pandemic recovery. China accounts for 58% of global sand and gravel demand, according to UNEP data. High demand and the lure of big profits have extracted criminals who resort to elaborate schemes to conceal their activities. They often operate at night using boats whose dredging apparatus is hidden by the water. A crackdown by Chinese authorities on illegal sand mining in the Yangtze River this year uncovered 24 gangs involving more than 200 people and revenues of more than whatever this RMB 17M 2.6 million. The interest in environmental protection signified by the crackdown comes as the country prepares to host a UN Biodiversity Summit this year. They, China, have really stepped up monitoring and enforcement. They've really clamped down, said Pierre. I'm saying that name wrong, I'm sorry. Yet environmentalists say what has been exposed is just a fraction of a vast illegal mining industry. Elsewhere in China, intense sand extraction in freshwater lakes such as Poyang and Dongting have lowered water levels, increased drought risk, and endangered local wildlife. All right, I don't think they even have local wildlife in China, but okay. They poison themselves. Sand mining in China's Poyang Lake, dredging in what is thought to be the world's largest sand mine, began in 2001 after mining in the Yangtze River was banned. All right, I'm going to skip through these pictures because I don't even know what I'm looking at. China's insatiable demand for sand has also taken on a geopolitical edge. Aggressive sand mining around the Taiwanese island of Matsu has become a significant point of friction between Beijing and Taipei. China has also used large amounts of sand to build man-made islands that can house military bases and bolster Beijing's claims in disputed waters. Yu Bowen, a researcher at the China Aggregates Association, I don't even know why they have these people in their credentials, said coastal provinces such as Fujian across the strait from Taiwan had thriving illegal markets. Companies bid to take charge of an area of the sea and then it's theirs to use, he said. It could be 1 ship or 10 going to extract sand. That makes it hard to crack down. Mette Bendiksen, an assistant professor at Environmental and Geography of Copenhagen University in Denmark, said the hotspot for sand demand would shift from Asia to Africa in the coming decades. Western countries' need for sand has leveled. Asian countries' need is on the rise, and African countries' need for sand will increase in the next 10 years or so. She said, you might see the same horrific extraction practices in Africa in a few years. Besides a shortage for sand for construction, we have a shortage of sand for glass making. and it's expensive to recycle glass. And believe it or not, some municipalities in the United States will not recycle glass. It used to be that grocery stores would take glass recycling and they took can recycling, and now it moved to machines or whatever. But recycling is too expensive. And a lot of stuff, I'm sure a lot of these recycling places, they just take their stuff that isn't recycled and just throw it in the garbage like everyone else. All right, white people, that's the damage for now. Thank you so much for listening. I look forward to your thoughts below.